this have offended, they but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear. And this weak and idle theme no more yielding but a dream, gentles do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend.
Greetings and welcome to Gravity from Above. This is a channel which is named after a documentary project that I have been working on for many years. I started getting interested in puppetry in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, as a result of Film Forum in New York, where I used to live at that time, showing retrospectives of the works of the Quay brothers and Jan Švankmajer. And I kept coming back to these. I didn't own any videos at the time. Eventually, I knew I'd be moving to Alaska, so I bought a few videos so I could refer to these things when I talked with other people about them, since I knew hardly anyone knew who they were. And eventually, as I looked at these videos, I started saying, maybe it's not the animation that's primarily interesting me, although it certainly does. Maybe it's the actual puppets themselves, which were designed in an Eastern European or behind the Iron Curtain kind of mode. The Quay brothers are originally from Pennsylvania. They're identical twins. They got fascinated by Polish animation and ended up visiting Europe and have been living in London since the 1980s. We talk a lot about their background in the interview. But eventually, around 2005, I took a trip through Europe, and I was hoping to meet them, but I never did then. In 2012, I decided to start this documentary project in earnest. And so I got in touch with them. They were a little, I wouldn't say suspicious, but hesitant to meet me. They were like, what do you really want kind of thing. And I understood that perfectly. Their time is important to them, and they work on a lot of projects. On the 2012 journey, when I literally had been handed a camera and said, go shoot, someone who produced me for 5 minutes said, here, we'll do this for you. I didn't know what I was doing. But when I got to them, I had already filmed the great Jan Švankmajer and had met the granddaughter of Ladislas Starewitch. And both these names will become important as you watch the video. So I decided to see if I could meet them. They graciously allowed me to come over. They said, don't film anything. I said, okay. So I went there and we talked. And I guess my credentials were good enough. I don't mean academic credentials. I mean having talked to Švankmajer, Ladislas Starewicz's daughter, and that connection eventually helped them to put together, along with Carolyn, who is in Barcelona, a retrospective of all three of their work in Barcelona. And there's a book on that called The Metamorphosis. But they were impressed that I knew all of this stuff and had gone to the Toone Marionette Theatre, traveled through Poland, the Czech Republic, met these people, interviewed people. And so, in a sense, I had spoken their language. And in many ways, I was always following their breadcrumbs. They would mention something in an interview, and I would say, okay, Toone, how do you spell that? Toone, really? It's not tune? And, I would follow these breadcrumbs, which were still on the ground through their particular Black Forest. And I ended up talking with them, and they said, yeah, well, next time you come through, let's do an interview. So I came through again in 2016, and that's when this interview is from. And we had a great time talking. I met them on two different days. One day we just talked and such, and then I came back the next day and we did the official interview. Now, I must confess, my videography skills at that time were quite primitive, and I noticed when I had finished that it didn't quite look the way I really wanted it to. I had made a mistake in the way it looked, and so when I was putting this together, I said, wow, this is such an interesting interview. I've got to make it look better. So I purposely turned it into an old silent film quality video with, defects and stuff. And I look at it now and I go, yeah, that's what I want to see. Because if anyone can hold up to a black and white silent film kind of treatment, it's the Quay brothers. And I find that also the sound doesn't do quite what I wanted it to do. And part of this is my fault. When I was going through the noise reduction, I hit some parts of it a little too hard, which then when they stop talking, you'll notice the background sound come in. This comes from a misuse of compression. But it would take too much for me to go back and do it. I have the original elements. Someday I hope to put the whole documentary together. And so what I'm presenting to you now is my full interview with the Quay brothers. And I hope you find this interesting. For me, this is one of the most important interviews that I did in my series. And I say that I did interview Jan Švankmajer. I interviewed the late Henryk Jurkowski. I've interviewed, I think, around 40 puppeteers by now who all have amazing stories, especially there's at least 3 or 4 who have passed away since I recorded them. So I have this archive of hours of material. But this is one of my favorites because I think it was the Quay brothers that really influenced my, like I said, following their breadcrumbs. And I hope you watch this and listen to what they're saying and follow some of their breadcrumbs too. Because it'll take you into a world where you have to do a lot more thinking and interacting with what you're watching. It can't be passive. It's a long interview. It's about 2 hours long. And I have added visual material along the way to help illustrate what they're talking about. But they're great conversationalists, and we had a great time. And while there are some defects in the sound quality, you're not going to have any problem with it. And what can I tell you? Let's get on. We were already in the process of talking about the Toone Marionette Theatre in Belgium. When I started recording, I decided to leave that in because I said to myself, yeah, it is these conversations, and this is how we were talking, always going back and forth talking about things. We talk officially about the Toone Marionette Theatre later, but we talk about so much. We talk about Jan Švankmajer, we talk about Ladislas Starewitch, we talk about Louis Buñuel gets mentioned, all sorts of animation gets discussed, and the meaning of puppetry, the meaning of why puppets are hard to read. If you're thinking puppet films are like Muppets, this is not the video for you. This is something very different. So, let us join the Quay brothers and myself in a dialogue that's already in progress. But also, it'd be nice to get your impressions of what you saw, and not that.
Well, we saw the thing on YouTube. What Nicholas, he did those 2 parts with an Italian journalist. So, but we knew his father when he worked there. I mean, when he used to run it and do all the voices for the puppets. Remember?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He has a book that I really want to buy.
Does he?
The history. It goes up to about 1964.
Oh.
And there was a story that he told. Nicola, I didn't even know it himself, that I had read from another source of the puppeteer who hung himself amongst the puppets in the, I believe it was the 20s or teens, when cinema was coming in and people had stopped going to the puppet theater. And I guess this guy had just gotten so depressed that they came and found the guy hung with his puppets, which to me is, as an image, is just like, Wow, I'd build a whole film up to that.
Yeah.
Just human being puppets. Okay.
We used to have a book like this, yellowish on the tone. What happened to that? You're right. It's in there. I think it's in there.
So, the first question...
You have to set this off? It's on. It's running.
It's
okay.
on. It's on. Yeah, so I can get what you guys are whispering to each other. But,
He's not looking.
so they're both right there, so we're cool.
Okay.
So here, the first question may also be the last question, because it's the toughest question, it's the simplest question, but you might answer it and then come back to it at the end.
Yeah,
and it's the question, what is a puppet?
What is a puppet?
I think there's definitely conventional notions of what a puppet is and can be. I think also for us, we've often called the camera the third puppet. We also think of objects as puppets as well. They have a life, they have a history.
Yeah, I think they're like emissaries that really carry these secret forces that at a certain point, once the puppet's built, then it starts to inhabit you, and then you have to give it the life that it sort of is demanding from you, because of it's this transference, I think, a lot between you mold it, but at the same time as you mold it, it's being created and sucking forces from you to give it the life that it wants from you, in a way. So I think there's this dynamics that are in flux there, that you're
it's reciprocal.
Yeah,
between the puppet and...
Because I think at a certain point, a puppet has to haunt you with a life that even is beyond what you had conceived for it, so that it's tapping from the other side, as it were, from the other
side of the
mirror, and calling forth a life that doesn't maybe necessarily have anything to do with our conventional ideas that, this is so-and-so, this is Faust playing this role. I don't think we've ever really specifically done with any of our puppets where they play clear character roles. They're sort of like transmitters that take what's the word, like magnetic forces that or with radar waves, and they're a transmitter for that.
How would you see your relationship then to, say, the Wanderer in Street of Crocodiles? Do you?
Well, I think I think we've always called the sort of stalker in Crocodiles was really, he facilitates. He's a sort of a guide who is constantly in search of, I guess what he would say, I'm in search for the chance encounter, the epiphanies of the everyday. So in a sense, it's like as he journeys through the zone of the Street of Crocodiles, he comes upon all these scenes, as they were, these tableaus or occurrences. And it's like he's there always at the right moment, that privileged moment. And I think that's very important for us is that always that we have a character who seems to be there for the privileged moment.
Do you see yourself somehow in the puppet?
Oh, completely. That's us. We're always. Well, actually, you're both, because in a sense, but you're both the puppet because of the genuine interior journey that you're trying to chart through the film with your character, but it's coming upon these events or occurrences that are the ones which are the sort of unknown forces that we've sort of coerced out of the material that we're trying to work with. So in a sense, it's not like you can choreograph those moments, not choreograph, but in a sense, write them, because a lot of the times they occur as accidents or as, even for ourselves, chance encounters when we're constructing something.
What do you mean by the phrase "the third puppet" in reference to the camera?
Well, because in that respect, the camera has to be animated. If you're moving, you're making a track or a tilt or a pan, you're animating single frame. So it is a puppet.
I see.
It's more technological, but it's also
it's mathematics.
But it's also what the camera eye is actually attached to. So in a sense, it's an extension of that bigger eye, which is the cinema eye. That sort of way you just feel like it's an eye that you're animating.
With its own perspective.
Yeah,
obviously.
absolutely. Yes.
And so then, therefore, it is a puppet.
Yes, and also because that eye is an eye that you conjugate with different kinds of lenses, with depth of field or non-depth of field, or what kind of focus you want to use. So it's the privileged eye, and it's the one it's what the audience will ultimately see is exactly what that eye saw.
So it's clear to me that puppets at some point became very important to both of you. But also, I've heard in other interviews and from other sources that you didn't have puppets growing up. So, but did you have, for instance, any connection to say, you're both old enough to have seen puppets on television, I don't know if you saw Howdy Doody or some of the very simplistic puppetry that was done, or, Davy and Goliath stop motion animation on Sunday mornings or something like that. Did you see any of that sort of thing? I know you watch cartoons, but...
No, for sure. I remember at Christmas time, there were two commercials that would play all the time, and one of them was a Norelco shaving ad, which showed a Norelco electric shaver going across a snow landscape, which was stop animation. We figured that out much later. At the time, we didn't have a clue.
We thought it was magical.
Just sheer magic. And then the other thing was the story, the birth of Christ told in marionettes. Mm. And this was always played at Christmas. I remember we were both always...
And we were befuddled by the fact that they came down the chimney. We didn't know how they got across the threshold of the chimney. Did they cut the strings?
When the string... but that
are
was
we talking about the Norelco, or are we talking about...
No, there's two. There's two separate ones. The Norelco was stop frame.
But then there's a Nativity.
Nativity was marionettes.
Yeah, marionettes. So how did they come down a chimney?
You can string them down a chimney. But
what's a chimney? Why would there be a chimney in a...
That's what I
Nativity. Okay, I don't remember that. I remember in the Christ scene. In the Christ scene. In the Norelco ad, where does it not arrive in a...
Maybe your whole career can be explained by the confusion.
By the confusion. And the bad memory, obviously. But I remember that they, for both of us, they were very powerful and quite magical. And I think the strings really haunted us. Because we had no idea, our father or mother didn't explain how marionettes work, that there was somebody operating with strings above. So you felt that they must have something to do with the way they move.
Was this a half-hour show or something like that?
I think it was 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
Probably
the Norelco was what? 30 seconds
probably.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We found it on YouTube, I think, eventually.
I'd like to know who the animators were.
So, now I know you had the big revelatory moment when you started going to school and you came across the Polish posters and that led to Kafka and then eventually to, well, you know, you had Borowczyk as one of the poster makers, which led at some point to his animation videos, which I recently had a chance. I've got them all on DVD now, Blu-ray. So it was nice to see them.
Yes.
But, and there's some hints of puppetry in there, although...
Well, Renaissance is all object animation, as is the scenes from Rosalie. There's two specific Borowczyk films with, well, actually there's quite a few, the phonograph, but in terms of classic stop frame animation, Renaissance is the most important one. But then in Rosalie, there's a scene where the evidence being used for Rose against her trial are animated sequences, like puppet or object animation. But I was going to say that in terms of the Polish poster it happened when we first went to art school. So we were 65. We were 18 years old. So we went into art school at the Philadelphia College of Art, and the day we walked in, there was this in the exhibition room was a traveling exhibition of what we say the heroic period of Polish posters, which was 50s, 60s. And it's because I think after that it really declined, but we seem to have come in on it at a point which we discovered later was its great flowering. Yes. So you had people like Roman Cieslewicz, Starowiejski, Linitsa, Tomaszewski, and
Zamecznik, Van Gogh.
And Borowczyk too. But he did less. He didn't do that many posters, I don't think. Or at least they're not available. We actually saw his animation films before we knew he'd done posters, in fact.
Oh, okay.
Because in that exhibition, I don't think there was one.
There wasn't.
There was no
Where
Borowczyk.
did you see the animation?
At the Philadelphia had a festival, an animation festival, every year. And I think we caught, like,
it was at the museum.
At the museum. And we caught the grandmother's, the dictionary, Joachim's dictionary, and grandmother's, was it? Anyway.
So were there animation films in these festivals that kind of caught your attention?
Well, these Borowczyk ones and Lenitsa were the ones that really struck us right away because they were cut out and collage, and that mixed along with seeing the Polish posters where a lot of collage was used. But I think, as we've said before, that it was these poster makers were, in a sense, they were painters. broadest sense of the term, so that the element of using painterly methods, but in a very graphic, formalist manner, the use of typography also in a similar expressive manner, was everything that against what when you walk down the street in Philadelphia, where there's so much information that the image is almost secondary. And in Poland, these were posted in the street, and it was one powerful image. It would say the Warsaw, say the Opera House, give the title of the opera, and then just say
The composer.
Composer. That was it.
3 elements.
So simple and so evocative and fantastic.
So at this point, you were primarily focused on graphic arts, or painting and things like art and graphic arts.
Well, we were studying illustration and printmaking,
But we were seeing films.
Yeah, and we were fascinated by film, absolutely. Mostly live action, but we could see that with what Borowczyk and Lenitsa were doing was a way of dragging this very graphic world of animation and with collage, and creating these really powerful, intense worlds that weren't, for us who only knew Disney and color, and which just didn't interest us at all. Absolutely didn't interest us.
So at this point, there isn't that much in the way of the puppet.
No,
your world.
No, not at all.
And so by the time, I take it this was a few years later, that Keith Griffiths says to you, would you like to make an experimental film?
Yeah.
And you I know at that point you said, well, we wouldn't know what to do with an experimental film, but maybe something with puppets. Yeah. Something has happened in between then.
That's 15 years we're talking about.
It's that long.
It's that long. Because we went to the Royal College for 3 years. We did see a lot of Borowczyk animation films. We saw his complete retrospective. We've seen the Trnka. We would have seen Poyar at the Royal College. But then we left. We returned back to Philadelphia and lived for 7 years before finally leaving. And then that's when we met Keith, who proposed to do an experimental film for the British Film Institute.
So in a way, between the Philadelphia College of Art and then going to the Royal College of Art in London, coming back, and then returning with the intent of going on to live in Amsterdam to do book covers or wash dishes, whatever. We'd seen a body of puppet work, but I don't think we would have ever conceived to make an application or thought that we could get away with off our own bat, so we're just to dive in and make a film. But when Keith's offer came that it would have been funded by a grant from the British Film Institute, then we suddenly kicked into action, and then
it was only when we got the money that we said, now what do we do? We had no idea how to make a puppet. And essentially we went out and bought one of those stupid the artist's mannequin puppets and tried to work with that.
I tried.
Which was a disaster.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is because it's true that the technical side of puppet animation has, as opposed to, say, string marionettes, which are basically floppy, and then if through the fluid manipulation, but it's live action in real time, puppet animation would have demanded a very sophisticated, ideally a ball and armature joints, or using wire, but depending on the degree of sophistication that you want from your puppet. But it was learning how to, we had to light the scene. We knew a little bit enough about film cameras that wasn't going to be a problem, but also just learning to build decors and and actually laying out a physical space and deciding on what your scale would be was just something that everybody has to do it, but we had to learn to do it under fire, as it were. And of course, it's the best teacher in the world is just to make thousands of mistakes.
So I take it was during this original period at the London College,
Royal College of Art.
Royal College of Arts, and that you came across Starewitch, and was it then?
I think we actually came across Starewitch a little bit earlier in Philly. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't.
I think we saw it in...
Maybe it wasn't London.
After when we came back from London, the Royal College, we actually rented the mascot and showed it on a 16mm projector.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Library of Art had a 16mm copy that you could rent. It was amazing.
That's all. That's the only one they had of his.
Yeah.
But how did you already know about him? Where did he come in?
I think when we were at the Royal College of Art, the National Film Theatre showed maybe a small retrospective.
Might have been the first one he did with the insects. I think that's what really...
And I think we just went along and we'd read about it, and that's how we discovered it.
So let's talk about Starewitch for a minute. Yeah. What is it about his work? Describe a little of it, and what is it about his work that... So, because obviously to me Starewitch is, precedes certainly Švankmajer. Maybe he precedes Trnka in a way.
Oh yes, by far. Yes.
And what was it about his work? He seems to be the key touchstone to planting some sort of seed.
Yeah, I think because instantly with the Starewitch film, although you may be in the realm of the fairy tale, already you feel it's a very grown up world and not something for
it didn't pander to children.
Yeah, and he had enough of a I think it was his entomologist side that struck the big key for us, because we'd already known Buñuel's films, and particularly Un Chien de Loup, which I think was always one of the films that set the highest mark from the word go for us. And we know how Buñuel dealt with entomology, and I think we instantly related. They were just instant parallels. That Starewitch, I mean, as the story goes, he couldn't get the insects to act or move where he wanted them to, so then he stuffed wires in them, the dead ones, and then animated them. And I think that must have been for him one of the most fantastic discoveries, that moment of
revelation.
Yes, what I can do now with this material. And of course, one of the first stories he tells is that great one of the
Revenge of
the Grasshopper, or like that. And again, you think, that's not a children's theme, right? He went right...
It's an adulterous... affair.
Yes, spying on your... with a camera, all that kind of detective thing, and done with a great sense of humor. And apparently the Tsar loved it. So I think he was given...
But even at the time, there was very little in terms of books that you could find on Starewitch. Yeah. Nothing at all. Nothing in America. Maybe Paris there might have been, but
no internet at that time.
I forgot to say that we, when Keith found the money, and we said to ourselves, we've got to now learn how to make a puppet film. The one person who was available here was a woman called, what's her first name, Novakova, who used to work with Trnka. She was living in London, and so we would meet with her, and she would tell us certain things, and then she actually arranged for us to see a 20-minute documentary made on Trnka, in which she appears in it. So that was also, a big help to see other people working in a studio situation, and Trnka having designed all the puppets, and Poya was animating. It was very good.
Bye.
Milena Novakova.
Yes.
Yeah.
So back to before we get to
Yeah.
back to Starewitch, mascot. Let's discuss that for a moment. What is it you love about that film?
Well, it was the only film of Starewitch that was really available and with stills also. You could find it in certain books. And I think it was the Devil's Ball at the end that it really comes to this extraordinary fruition of the demonic and this dark figure of his devilish character,
worthy of Bulgakov. And
yes, Master Margarita,
truly powerful.
And the way it dies at the end has to be, the sawdust pouring out of it, and this dark satanic laughter and voice that it had was sensational. And he was an absolutely fearless animator. When you see this, the puppets and the crude armatures, but most of them were just wire, and you think, for us using wire, it's so springy. Like, it can't be too strong, but it can't be too weak, and it's finding that right thing. But he just, and apparently animated with great speed. Didn't keep a notebook, but could animate 20 and 30 characters.
I know exactly where they were.
Where they were in there.
Even we can't remember it's the hand going up or down. We have to write notes or put an arrow saying it's going up.
Did you see the version? There was one version I saw that did not have the scene where the headless Harlequin doll is playing like a mandolin or a lute or something, and the ballerina has tears coming down. That's just such a.
I believe
it's been restored by the and it's the different. We saw different images that we'd never seen before, but
there's something of a lascivious monkey.
Yes.
Well, that was always there.
That was always there.
He's always sort of going like this girl, but he's very disturbing. Yes.
In your conversations with Švankmajer, one thing, now I recorded a conversation with him. I asked him about Starewitch. I got kind of a summary of what he said back. But the one question I didn't resolve is when he saw. Do you have any idea when he first saw them?
No idea.
He told us we were at a film festival with Jan, and there was a Charley Bowers, a couple of films that were playing. And Jan told us, these existed in Prague at the film archives, and he'd seen them there. So, and we'd never seen a Charley Bowers in our life.
Or heard of him.
Or even, yes.
I mean, that's the most secret. It's as though Disney had abolished him, because you never heard of the man. There's very little known about him.
One of the best kept secrets for the longest while, and then I think we were dealing. The woman was Louise Baudet at the Cinematheque in Quebec.
Yeah, the Pacific Archives.
Anyway, she had these prints, and that's when we started to really investigate Charley Bowers. But our feeling was that, I mean, we never really spoken to Jan about Starewitch. I'm sure that the archives had it, but the Czech archives probably had stuff of Starewitch also.
It's hard to know.
It's like when you always heard that the film academies like FAMU in Prague or Vigik in Moscow, that people like Tarkovsky, they could watch all the films from the West, the most from the Godards, the Truffaut, all that was available for the students because it was part of their history lesson, learning the craft. I'm sure that, although Jan wasn't at FAMU, he was at the puppet school. I'm sure that he must have.
He was at Damu.
I really don't know. Anyway, maybe these films were available, or he was invited to have a look at them. Being a student, that this is what you could do with puppets, and. Yeah, who knows? I
don't think he was going to a lot of film festivals, so he couldn't have seen it.
No,
probably. And even at the time,
but he would have seen it at the archives, though, probably
more likely. But what I'm saying is that even back then, Starewitch, his films weren't, on huge release. They were pretty obscure.
They were
locked up.
They were on ropey 16mm prints that a few people had in England, because we could write to them and get them sent to us.
Or the one time we went to Paris, we went out to their archives,
the film archives,
and saw some of his films.
But they were one-off little screenings, and that was it. It vanished. There was no way to, you couldn't get a video cassette of it. There was nothing that existed. In those days, cassettes didn't exist. So.
Well, let's talk about Trnka then.
Yeah.
And what is it? So evidently you discovered him after, by some time, Starewitch. And what kind of impression did he make?
Well, I think it was the hand. Of all of Trnka's films, it was the hand that really grabbed us.
His films were pretty available.
Yeah.
A certain amount of them. Schweik we did see, even with subtitles back then. We saw a documentary about him working in the studio. It was about 20 minutes long. So we saw, how a proper film studio ran, puppet film studio ran, and it was, evocative.
And there was even an exhibition in London in the early 1980s, which had a traveling exhibition of Trnka's puppets. So you could actually see them in glass cases. So that was a big impression on us. But we also saw a formidable technique.
What year about was that?
About 1980, 81, 82 maybe. But I think that's something that you realize that it was very much partial parceled out. There was the costume makers. There was the division of labor, as there are in most big studios. Whereas I think somebody like Starewitch would have
Done everything,
along with his wife. Probably pretty much the same with Jan, making everything. He would have used a cameraman and an animator. Usually he always worked with animators.
When did you discover Teschner?
We had a book, I believe. Yes, a book, an English book on puppet theatre.
German book. The German one we have?
I was thinking the Beaumont.
Oh, right, yes, that's right.
We did have a German book edition. And then we just saw this Figuren Theatre of Teschner, and we went to Vienna. When 81, we were in Vienna, and we went to the museum and saw the cabinet inside in the library with all his puppets. And we actually met one of his operators. It was a woman who was in her 90s, and we met her in a cafe. And there were three of us, and we didn't speak German. She hardly spoke any English, and I think we fumbled through. But she's in one of those photographs with Teschner as a young girl. There's two girls. I think it's one of those.
What was it about
It's the beauty
puppetry that...
Well, we did actually go out to Linz and see one of his films that he'd done. It was black and white, as we remember. It's like a 16mm print, probably. But inside the library, it was the precision, the imagination of the quality of the detail of his puppets, the costuming, the very rich sense of decor.
And this German edition that we found on Teschner literally laid out how the armatures were built, how he designed them. So you saw this fantastic precision that would have probably come out of the Vienna successionist
period
ethic. Beautifully designed and beautifully, the craftsmanship was remarkable. And that they were his influence by the Javanese puppets, so they were rod puppets, but they were built, they had such elegance and very, they never spoke, the puppets. He apparently, it was just the sound of like a music box. So this must have been this very slow balletic journey that was made through each of his puppet shows. And then, of course, with this beautiful, it was played behind a glass, they said a concave lens. We somehow imagined it would be convex, but maybe depending on which side you were on, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, I've seen the photos of it, and it looks remarkable. And evidently, this Teschner scholar is reproducing his nativity in Teschner style, which would be really fascinating.
Yeah,
I have to get myself to Vienna. December.
Well, I see they have a DVD out now, and so we're curious. Have they restaged things and then filmed them? But
it'd be nice to have even that older video.
Yeah,
film.
I'm sure that's included somewhere. Right. Yes.
Yeah, he has very much a symbolist feel to him.
Yes. And he was an illustrator like Trnka. They started off as illustrators or painters, so that you saw the transformation from the two dimensions into the third dimension, and creating these very beautifully closed universes.
I notice in some of your films you have the references to the Isle of the Dead at Brooklyn and things like that. Do you have any specific attraction to the symbolists, or is it just one of many elements that you use in your work?
I think it's part of your arsenal of just knowing your periods of history that. I mean, you're not academics, but when we look at the pictures, the images, or what the symbolists created, there's an ethic of the symbolists that we particularly liked, which was that it created this very suggestive world. It wasn't overly announced, but it was
evoked.
Yes,
It's something that both lighting and music profoundly magnifies. I think that's something that it's what disappointed us with the two-dimensional world was the fact that it didn't have sound or music or movement for that matter.
What do you mean, the two-dimensional world?
Well, doing illustrations, they're just flat. I mean, we're not talking about 2D animation, but we were just doing illustrations.
So, you're talking about Trnka and Teschner, both in the early 80s. Was the film that you were commissioned, was that Nocturna?
Yeah, it was 78, 79,
Okay.
and came out in 79.
And prior to that, though, I detect that there were some long-forgotten little things that you had been working on.
Well, we'd done some cutout animation at the art school in Philadelphia, and we'd done quite a bit of live action there, but they were always little things. Then when we came to the Royal College of Art, we did three animation films.
And what years were those?
So that was 69 to 72. We did 3 cutout films.
So this would have been almost predominantly under Borowczyk and the Poles.
Yes, Lenitsa.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes, completely. In fact, the first one we did was based on the Handel organ concerto that Borowczyk used in Goto. So
I think we can categorically state once and for all that you guys don't come from Švankmajer. Just to address that issue, because it still seems to,
No, I think it's like a little bit like Charley Bowers. In a way, Švankmajer was one of the most amazing kept secrets in the animation world, because, mind you, when we started in 79, we went to one animation festival, and then we didn't go to any until I think we did Street of Crocodiles. Did we finally get a film accepted at an animation festival?
And even then, Švankmajer's films weren't being shown at a festival.
But
we could see Norstein.
And there was nothing in print. We saw nothing in print until a friend of ours who was at the Royal College with us,
who was Czech,
and he said, do you know the works of Jan Švankmajer? And we said, no. And he said, why don't you have a look at them? And this was around 1982, 83, and we brought it up to Keith, saying, I think we'd done a little bit of research, and we found out about his work. And then that's when we worked up a project which Channel 4 accepted on our angle in was to do Czech surrealism as opposed to French surrealism, because French surrealism had, in a sense, died after Breton's, really after the Second World War. talking about Czech surrealism as opposed to French surrealism.
Well, yeah.
But we don't have to go that distance, do we? You just want to know.
I was just asking questions about how. I was trying to get the timeline here on when you started actually making films, which it seems like you have, from what I understand of the films I haven't seen, that there are puppet type characters in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only the flat.
The one that we mentioned yesterday was the Punch and Judy film, which was made after Nocturne, right?
You mean our Punch and Judy?
Yeah.
Darcy, baby, Wincy, shall daddy chop and Lindsay step on its back and make it crack? Darcy, baby, Wincy.
Which is a documentary.
But it had a sequences from the opera.
I think Byrne's talking about...
Well, that's part of the timeline.
No, prior to...
That's still important to know, and we'll get to Punch in a moment. But,
prior to coming to puppets, you mean?
Yeah, I'm just interested in the how you guys got to... it's like, what put it in your head? And it seems like it was the Polish animators who put this thing inside of you that you already started playing with it, and then it somehow was natural to add figures.
I remember that when we were, after we left the Royal College of Art, and we then went back to Philly from 72 to 77. So for those 5 years, we started doing a lot of what we called the black drawings, and in those black drawings, we each worked in our own corner, as it were, of the room. But a couple times,
the use of a tram.
Tram, and I had a puppet character like that. But I think we'd seen enough imagery around and seen enough films that it haunted us in the sense of as a potential, but in no way realizable. Just, it was interesting. It fascinated us like that. And then I remember we were working at a cafe. Well, one of us was dishwashers, and then one of us was a waiter. But I remember that at Halloween they asked us to do a display window, and I remember we built, about the size of this table here, a three-dimensional city with a tram. And we built it out of photocopies, but I remember it gave us a fantastic feeling for
volume,
yes,
and space, and light,
and we populated it as though it were. It was very monochromatic, except for the posters and the spots of color and this tram, and then I think we just started doing a few figures of puppets, but again, nothing for. They were just little sketches of ideas of playing with the third dimension and using objects and getting a feel for texture and fabrics and then, of course, it wasn't until Keith gave us the thing that it all kicked in, and then you had to go for it. But by then you'd accumulated enough baggage, as it were, and enough coordinates in terms of of your own artistic enterprise, of what you had a feel for. A lot of it came from these black drawings. Right away we said that's what we wanted to physicalize. So we would take elements out of the black drawings and say, okay, we want a real object for that. So we needed a tram pylon or something. And this came about through we traveled through Poland quite a bit, and we were fascinated by anonymous architecture like tram pylons.
They just did it differently.
And better.
Brutal.
Okay, well, let's go here then. What is it about Poland, this communist world? Because obviously Poland now has mutated somewhat since then. But I get the feeling you were kind of haunted by the grayness and...
Well, no, because we didn't know it yet. All we knew was the artistic side of it in print, in magazines, or seeing or reading its literature or things like
seeing
that.
Seeing films.
Exactly, seeing live-action films, Vida, those films.
But it wasn't until 1974 that we actually ventured going there.
And that's when our friend Andrzej Klimowski, whom we met when we were in our last year at the Royal College of Art, and he was studying at St. Martin's, and we'd gone to see an exhibition, the final show, and we saw Klimowski's work, which had a lot of images of Borowczyk material that he'd done a poster for it. And in our final show, Timothy had done a poster for Borowczyk. So, in a sense, Andre left a message saying, we'd love to meet up and talk about Borowczyk or something like that. So we met up. And then we carried on a long correspondence. He went off to live in Poland to study with Tomaszewski and to learn about the Polish poster. And we went back to America. And then while we corresponded, he said, why don't you come visit me in Poland? So in 1974... We traveled to Poland, took the long train from the Hook of Holland, and...
But I know the one thing that we although we had a stills camera, we took very, very few stills. We took more film, Super 8.
We documented all of Poland with Super 8.
What was it about the Poland of that time that impressed you?
Well, I knew traveling, as you got from Berlin, after you got through Berlin, then East Berlin, and then you started making it to Poznan.
Poznan, yeah.
Then it was at long plains there to Warsaw.
And it was a slow train, such a slow train,
yeah.
You could easily film.
And it was just this extraordinary architecture.
Well, even though you were warned that you were not allowed to film train stations. We did.
But I think it was then, and Warsaw was, it was grey. I think it was winter, or maybe late spring or something, but it was a city with functioning trams, like Philadelphia was actually. So I think we'd always created a myth about trams.
But then it was when we went to Łódź in Krakow. Łódź, the trams were made of wood.
No, in Krakow they were
wood.
Wooden trams. They were blue, and in Łódź they were red, or red yellow. And but Łódź also was a fantastic industrial city. I guess it was just that starkness where the industry was so prevalent and powerfully ensconced in this greyish landscape. But we're fond of grey, so it didn't seem bleak to us. It just felt that's how these guys' vision rose out of this landscape. The way they worked, and we felt that it went hand in hand.
Toone. So how did you... I take it you heard about Toone from someone in Holland when you were there?
Yeah, it must have been in Holland. Yes, because it was while we were living in Amsterdam. Somehow we found out about the Toone Marionettes in Brussels, and we just said, hey, come on, Brussels isn't that far. It's,
2 hours away.
2 or 3 hours away on the train. So we made the journey and just walked into a marionette show that day, and in the heart of Brussels.
But the Toone Theatre is in a staminet, which is a kind of
bar.
It's a bar, and so you could have the famous Belgian beers, which we were absolutely crazy about. And there was one. The other place was La Mort Subite, which was this other turn of the century bar that's very famous. And we connected the two, beer, cherry beers, with wood of the puppet, so they seemed, linked, perfectly linked.
And in the Toone there was the estaminet, but then you sort of made your way into the little tiny theater.
And also we were reading a lot of Michel de Gelderode, and he was the one who wrote for the Toone
Marionette
Theatre, and it was he who said that it's very important that in entering the puppet theatre that you stoop to enter it, and that was an important way of paying, humans lowering themselves to the realm, the majesty of puppets, and that really fascinated us.
And there was that humble sense too of stooping and humility to that this world was powerful and enchanting. Enchantment's very important.
And that we discovered that a lot of very famous composers had worked with the puppet theatre throughout history.
When you would walk away from, say, that puppet theater, or maybe coming away from even a Starewitch film, or from seeing the actual Teschner puppets or something, what kind of conversations would you have? What kind of things would it spark off, particularly before you started actually making the films?
I think you were very, with Teschner, you were very aware of just the sheer beauty of the puppet, that it was an artisan was there crafting it magisterially, almost, with his technique, his abilities, and
it was almost sacred. He was a kind of magician, working very quietly. But I think it was something that, although we were in awe of what he did, I don't think we came away saying, "Oh, we'd like to emulate that. We'd like to do rod puppets." I mean, we did it once, but I think we felt ourselves gravitating more towards puppetry, animation with armatures,
but at the same time, still bringing that ethos of the craftsmanship to it, knowing that we'll just do it in stop frame animation. But I think also, you go to see the Toone Marionettes, and it was baldy and brash, raucous. And raucous, and these giant slabs of wood being slapped around, spiked to the head, and just, I think only one hand moving, maybe two, but and the heaviness of clatter on the floorboards was very physical and visceral.
And that's right, because once in London, around that time, we'd seen the Sicilian marionettes had come to London, and we were there, and we were truly impressed by the sheer physicality, the weight. They're very clear, and they mentioned it in the Toone how much the Sicilians had influenced them.
Yeah, in fact, maybe we're there at the very beginning.
We're there, yes.
I really wanted to get to Palermo. And,
we've been there.
And did you go to the Capuchin?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But, the Orlando Furioso goes on over 300 chapters.
Wow, yeah.
It's just, which is, I guess that was like their soap operas or something.
Yes, there must have been, yes.
It's pretty amazing. Other puppets prior to your first animation films? Anything else you can think of?
I mean, as children,
Punch?
No, Punch and Judy didn't interest us at all. It was too slapdash, and I think it was...
And yet you made that documentary.
Well, it was Keith's idea.
I see.
He proposed it. And
so how did, once that was proposed to you, how did you then start looking at Punch?
Well, I think we looked at it from the point of view of how Harrison Birtwistle and who wrote
Stephen somebody
who wrote the libretto, which was ferocious, and the music was ferocious, and I think we really leapt to that occasion. That was a challenge. It was a remolding of Punch back to his original ferocity, and I think that was a great provocation there. I think that was something, and in it we did find some original Punch, and we were able to animate him coming out of paper, and I think we suddenly softened a bit just in order to reattack.
Where is that footage now? Was it used in the MoMA show, or?
We have it somewhere.
Well, it exists. The BBC showed it on television. We have a 16mm print. I don't know if we've ever... It's not... we've never put it on DVD because
It's all over the
you
show.
sort of feel it's early work.
Right, I understand.
Our animation wasn't very good, and so you sort of
There are some people who might be curious, but
no.
it's probably not the general audience.
Keith, the scenario is great.
But what is your general audience?
Yeah, exactly. How would we know?
Had you ever thought much about things like Harryhausen and King Kong, things like that? Had those made any impression when you were young?
Harryhausen, not so much.
Not at all. Nor the skeletons, the famous.
Yeah, we didn't like
Battle sequence.
those kind of stories. Although King Kong, to believe it or not, I don't think we realized that it was a puppet. I don't know what we thought it was, but we never really gave it much attention until, of course, we did research it eventually, and then found out a lot about how it was done. And no, it's very admirable what Harryhausen did that. And then we met him much later. In fact, I had a bad back accident on a bicycle, and I had to go for therapy. And the guy who took care of me, when he found out, he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I work in animation." Immediately he said, "You know what? I used to carry the armatures of Harryhausen because I used to travel with him up and down the English, giving lectures, and I used to hold and handle all the armatures." So I thought that's interesting.
It would be interesting if somehow someone gave you the armatures and you could then put whatever you wanted on them.
Yeah. Well, we would have been impressed that they were, took us
Just to have seen the mechanism.
the mechanism. That fascinates.
It's kind of interesting, though. I mean, photos I've seen of more recent, the last surviving King Kong, he's getting really ratty looking. And it almost makes him, that much more interesting.
Yeah.
To look at when I go back and look at that King Kong now, I really just see a puppet show because it's so obvious compared to all the digital.
Yes, I know.
No sense in going over the Tim Burton thing. We talked about that. George Pell, do you ever see any of the Puppetoons?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, these are all available in England, so we got to see them. But I think it's a route that we didn't.
Yeah.
We looked at it as cinema
As history.
As history. And
No, it's remarkable. It's been very impressive.
Yeah.
All that replacement, and I think it's something we also felt we weren't going to venture into that.
Yeah, replacement is it feels like almost a different art.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about Kurt Weiler, because I think a lot of people don't know him at all, and it might be interesting too.
Well, we met Kurt Weiler in Zagreb when we had crocodiles there back in '85, and he approached us. He came up to us and talked, and he spoke in this immaculate English because he left Germany, came to London during the war and lived there, but had gone back to
East
Germany to form the new vision of a different Germany, so to speak, more progressive Germany, and but he was doing puppet films, none of which we had seen or were available until only recently when a DVD came out.
So he gave us a cassette.
We had a cassette which was
only in German.
It was only in German.
But they were traditional fairy tales that they told, but they were...
There was always a moral tale to be discerned from that.
But again, they were adult. Again, you could see under the socialist system, they subsidized serious animation as well as they would have subsidized children's animation. But he obviously lined up on the edges of between adult and children's, and they were very beautiful.
There were cautionary tales as well.
Yeah, I liked some of the textures and the faces and such.
Well, he had and we only discovered much later that his designer was Achim Freyer, who we know now has done so much for opera decors and directing opera. And we have 3 books of his, but the earlier pictures show that he did done work with Kurt Weiler before he became famous as an opera director and designer.
So here's something, this might be a little painful, but you've probably seen and winced at some of those Tool videos.
I've never seen one.
Okay, I watched a few just before doing this and just went, it's like they looked at your videos and got the surface with no interior at all, which it's very strange, to have these things that are just kind of running around and doing things, looking a bit like your material. It's quite clear they were saying, "Wow, this is really cool."
Well, and it's that, and now it gets taken up by the bloggers,
right?
Who are profligate in disseminating total misinformation or passing things off
as knowledge.
That for sure the Quays did this one or that
until you see that they're being corrected by some other blogger.
Yeah, it's a lot of amateur hour out there.
Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. In fact, do you want to take a 5-minute break?
No.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the poor machines. What's this? This one? It's certainly not going to get.
It won't get
all the
restored.
way. But if this one, I maybe got it 2/3, 3/3. Well, but it's a much bigger capacity.
Okay. We'll speak faster.
Just be yourself. Who cares? Let's talk about the puppet and the doll, particularly your use of broken doll parts. I know, like, for instance, Terry Gilliam, who likes your works, has used doll faces and such in some of his work, like in Brazil, but your use of it is very different. And where does this come from? Does this just come from kind of like walking around? Talk about the doll for a moment, and we'll come back to the puppet part. Puppet part.
But I don't think we ever. It's a word we're not very fond of that word, doll, because it has so many contaminant elements to it, where it's cutesy and all that.
Victoriana.
Yeah. So I think we tend not to really mention that word between ourselves. It's just not part of our
sort of pejorative. We say doll-like, but we rarely use the word dolls.
But I know that being in London, but it's full of markets. You can go to one every day almost. And I think that we got in the habit when we were back in the States of going with our mother to, there was this one market up in Perkiomenville. And I remember that feeling that you'd see these people set up their stalls. And of course, all the time they're making this probably unconscious aesthetic choice of how they set things up for themselves. But then, of course, when we roll by and we'll sort of see a setup and we'll sort of eye each other and say, look at that one, what he said, what the conjugation of two objects are. So right away, I think we were on to that you're just open to the chance encounter. Well before even surrealists talk about it, you could see it there in place. And there were always fragments of things, because that's what boot sales are, or secondhand flea markets. Also, we never had the money. Whenever we had a budget for a film, it was always, we had to find things or make them. So if we couldn't find a puppet, you'd never go to a market looking for a puppet because you'd never find one. But occasionally we've come across them when you're least suspecting it, you'll find a puppet. But I know, for instance, the doll's heads, which featured in Jan's films, you could find them all over the place in the markets. They were nothing.
But I think it's true that finding or rather rescuing a puppet from a market was something that we felt that you'd see it there stranded amongst all this debris, and you thought we could do something with that. And the puppet had a history, we felt, and we wanted him to continue on to another history that we could either, for the project that we were doing. So the one puppet that's in the comb appears in Stille Nacht 1, and later on in another film. But we always felt like they can have multiple lives. They deserve it too.
Also, we in Robert Walser's work, we discovered his little dramalettes and retelling of fairy tales. And I remember when we found this puppet that we used in the comb, we said, there it is. There, he really is a little fairy tale creature. His whole face, there was something open and innocent, and he was stuffed with sawdust, and we just emptied him and put an armature inside it. Save the sawdust and.
Yes, someone knew that because I create puppets out of whatever I find. I particularly like the ones I made out of dried salmon heads. But someone gave me a bunch of just like someone they knew had a bunch of doll parts, but they were all these plastic, more recent ones, and most of the material is just I can't think of anything really to do with it because it does have the cutesy sort of feel. Although there's another box of stuff like new little minstrel dolls and things. Now that is a whole different zone because it's and that stuff is very hot to touch in terms of culturally in America. Which I get curious about that stuff. But why don't you give me a little of your take about how it happened that dolls went from like dolls and puppets. And I know you well enough to know that you're not really a great fan of all the cutesy stuff that's been done in the name of all these figures. How do you think that happened? What do you think the process was that turned them into these unbearably saccharine creatures?
I think it's all a process of Victoriana slowly freezing them.
It's taming the forces within them. The child, it's like a correctional institution. It's institutionalizing them inside this sublime household, with everything pristine and.
Yeah, we just went recently to the Kensington Toy Fair, which is normally it's pretty good. You can find a lot of secondhand material, old wigs or objects that people have kept in their archives and unload. This time it was just, there wasn't one secondhand thing. You couldn't even buy a pair of secondhand glass eyes, but everything was spanking new, and you watch the people go around madly obsessed with the. It sort of made us feel that my God, we're quite removed from that kind of fussiness, and that we're not interested in that at all. But they do want to create these immaculate little kingdoms of where
all the dolls have fresh knickers.
Yeah, arrested development. There's no journey anymore. It's just a frozen.
Where time stops.
Yeah, And although when we go to, like, if you go to the Rijksmuseum and you see some of the doll houses there from the 1700s, I know we can sit there and sort of salivate over the quality of the craftsmanship of the decors, you know, the real tiles that are used, and they're quite stunning. But
maybe the view of childhood has changed, so
yes,
that
perhaps,
we want children now to be purely innocent,
yes,
and not to have an exploratory side that gets fascinated by the darker parts fairy tales and such.
Yeah, I'm sure that.
Were you exposed to fairy tales much as children?
No, not at all.
The only ones we saw would have been Disney.
Disney's.
That's it. I don't even think we read Brothers Grimm as children, even.
No, we were into Tarzan. Tarzan book.
That's right.
Edgar Rice Burroughs.
That's your final version, the puppet version of Tarzan. Your version of Tarzan, which would be quite bizarre.
Tarzan in Poland.
Yes, exactly. Yes. This is just a personal question. Someone I really admire, I don't know if you've ever read his work, is George MacDonald. Do you know about him? Scottish late Victorian writer, who did, it's kind of, if you can imagine Edgar Allan Poe writing fairy tales.
Right.
And it's just extraordinarily dark, extraordinarily beautiful. And the book Lilith is the one I would really recommend.
Oh, no,
and
heard of him.
there's just images in there that it's just like no one has ever conjured stuff up like this. And that was not written for children at all, although he does have some children's work. But he's got a short story, The Golden Key, which ends with they're looking for the 3 different old men on their way to the land of the shadows, and the last one is a baby who's on this mossy embankment. It's like there's all this fire. This is the old man of the fire, but it's on this mossy embankment, and he's playing with like marbles in the middle of the air. It's just absolutely incredible stuff. I always thought if you hadn't heard of him, you should.
Yes, well, we'll make a note.
Okay. Yeah, there's something very, it's almost sanitary about the modern doll. There's...
Well, it's like Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
They don't menstruate, that's for sure. But,
Well, you were saying something in that one interview with the French guy in the doll museum, which I'd been to that doll museum before, and I completely agreed with you. It's like there's some in the beginning that are kind of interesting, and then you get into Victoriana, and then by the end it's hopeless.
It's hopeless.
you've lost. You've completely lost.
Yeah, it's like they just become not even worth looking at.
Yeah. You've lost your erection.
I'll make sure that's the quote on Quay Brothers. You've lost your erection. Discussing doll.
No, I said lost your direction.
Yes, it's like Wally Haskell. Particularly nasty weather, particularly ass with a feather. Anyway, but yeah, there's like some quality in, I think, modern design of toys and such. It's almost like they do too much for your imagination. That is to say, it's like Star Wars. I just saw that because I had to. It was like, and I'm just saying, like, it's all, we have the ability to do everything, and there's no gap left for me to imagine when I come out, except to enter their world, go buy their toys, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think what happens is they clip the wings of the imagination by over refining it, over finishing it, so there's nothing left.
Yeah.
All you can do is play with it and break it.
Yeah, it's like the classic ancient dolls always had there was that blankness that went with it that you
could feed it.
And this is exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the inhabiting the doll, inhabiting you.
Yes. Having that space.
Oh, and that was one of the things that I really wanted to get to. That you'd started talking about this with him, but the concept of reading the doll and the fact that it is hard to read. Discuss that. What you meant by hard to read. Why is that important? Why should a doll be hard to read, or a puppet be hard to read? Why shouldn't it be as lucid as, say, Star Wars, or as lucid as current contemporary digital animation where, it seems like it's all done for you. What is the value of this reading?
Well, I think that's part of of leaving the space for the viewer. I mean, but it's already implicit. It's in when you watch ballet, the dancer doesn't speak. It's pure movement to music in a spatial decor and with choreographed movement, so that you tell the story with those limitations or those extremes, but the dialogue is not there. You're not being told the story, but you have to make a reading of that story. Okay, maybe if it's a classic rendition, you'll know very well, oh, this is Sleeping Beauty, Prince, you know the points. If it's a little bit more of a modern dance thing, say if it's Pina Bausch or something else, then you're going to have to decide if that shadowy figure represents this figure represents that. So that's where the reading comes in, and that's where I think that, and dance, in a sense, the face becomes like a mask. So you read upon the mask. And I think that's the side that we personally like, that space to what's the word, dream upon or project upon. That's just, it's more mysterious. I think there's a genuine mystery, and I think that the sheer force of puppets, which are in principle inanimate. We all know that, and yet we go there knowing that we're going to be defied by that the skill of the puppeteer he is going to make that figure seem inhabited and provoke in you a kind of awe or response of it's like we always say, just spend a little time watching insects move, or watch a praying mantis swaying in a breeze on a branch, invisible, until he sees that, and suddenly he's captured that insect, because it's like it's a world that's in a way sort of incomprehensible for us, but there is a deep story lurking there. And
is the value in its opening the imagination?
Well, it is
crucial. And that ambivalence is something I think we like in others, and we prefer to do ourselves.
I think it is that otherness, which is something that exists. We all know in our systems when you're suddenly inhabited by a moment that you suddenly go, oh, this is deja vu. Why do I know this moment? So we all know what a sense of otherness really is. Somebody Lynch creates that magnificently. Those moments of the terror of the everyday and of something that seems so inconsequential, and then there's this deep, dark terror underneath of it. But I think the otherness is something that the mask really beautifully creates, and again, because it's giving you only that one precise moment. And of course, a slight tilting of the head, catching of a light at an angle, then modifies it. But you have this sense of it's not going to give anything away. And I think and of course, I think we as audience like to comfortably sit back, and we just like to be told the story. We don't want to work for it. But I think that's, for us, it's that little bit of extra work, which is
Well, that
we admire it in other puppeteers and in the other arts, whether in music, when it creates those states that you say you've just moved into that little bit of a higher realm of the you can't achieve, it's just beyond grasp, or it's unnameable. So I think that sense of getting there is something that's very something we like that appeals to us, that really haunts us or fascinates us, those moments.
There's something in it that works contrary to the reigning spirit of the age, which wants to pre-package, pre-sell.
Yeah.
And I think if we can probably spend time if something catches us and yet we don't quite understand it, the time spent trying to understand it
makes it richer for you. Yeah. I think yes, absolutely. It's a little bit like I think that's when we did the MoMA show. We it was the idea of lip reading puppets, because of course you can't, but the metaphor is there, and I think that's what we were trying to go for. Is that you have to lip read the mask. You have to do it. Well, some people commit, and other people just abandon ship and just say, "I'm not going there. I'm not interested." So
you often say things like that. Puppets have a life, and I think you're talking about some sort of interiority.
Yeah,
something
which is very symbolist, actually.
Yes,
it's something that we like that side too. That I don't, but we're not the kind of guys that go around. It's like voodoo or that.
Well, do you take it as far? Did you ever read that book, The Secret Life of Puppets, by Virginia Wilson? She mentions you.
Oh yeah.
We know
Victoria Nelson. Vicky Nelson. Yeah. Yes.
And well, she talks about the Hermetic, and she takes it almost to the point, although she doesn't follow through with her own illustration, but she almost takes it to the point of the idol, the thing totally inhabited, which you must, really be cautious of.
Right.
And I'm sure you're not quite there.
No.
So, but at the same time, I think there's some, in a sense, there's a psychological resonance, maybe, a oniric resonance, that somehow, I often think of this, when you think of your first memories, and Tarkovsky says if you know the first memories of someone, you almost surely know who that person is.
Yeah.
Because your first memories are never chosen by you. You can't, no one can choose their first memory.
Yeah.
It's just whatever first struck you.
Yeah, exactly.
And but there's something in that, and to me this goes, like in Eastern thinking, everything is an illusion. But in the concept of the memory choosing you, it seems that it's like, my first memory involves a dog, a black dog, and it was actually Tarkovsky's Dogs and Stalker and such that got me thinking about this. But there was a black dog, there was snow, there was a white house, and there was a gray, almost purplish sky. Yeah. And that's just what I remember as one of my first memories. And as I look, my life seems to play those things out in a weird sort of way. But it's almost like it was this set. I mean, we're never struck by it. No one, for instance, in modern America can remember their first car ride. Because you've been doing it, they brought you home from the hospital and they keep doing it. But, and fewer people are remembering their first airplane ride. I can remember mine a bit, even though I was only 3.5 years old, because... wow, those are propellers outside on the plane. I remember that. It was 1959. But I think it says that there's something in the things that kind of, it almost comes to you. It's like there's some value in the objective world that comes to you, and then you have a relationship to it. And I've often seen your films as very personal relationship to all sorts of objects. And it's the kind of thing, it isn't my job to sit there and try to figure out what they all mean. Because some of these things, when you're dead, people are going to say, well, I wonder what's the thing with all the little scissors or, but I don't think that's the point, is to explain it all. I think the point is the reading and trying to come to grasp with these things that you put in for us to look at, because obviously you do want someone else to see these very personal things, but nevertheless they aren't like, it's not like psychological realism where you're saying this is how we felt when X happened,
right?
You know. But I have noticed, like in the word fetish comes up sometimes in your description of things, that you like a certain kind of object. Interestingly enough, the word fetish, well, of course, it's used in a sense of sexual fetishes and stuff, but it's also used in they discuss like in discussing say African religion and such. And you have that the fetish object. You know. What explain more of your concept of the fetish, and also more about the object and your relationship to objects.
It's funny. No, I mean, when we talk about fetish, we think of Buñuel, but I don't think amongst ourselves, we don't talk about fetish in terms of dolls or puppets. That's something we recognize it, the term, but it doesn't form a mode of thinking.
Or I think in the sense that where we're like there's almost a fetishistic pursuit of, that side appeals to us.
That's pathological.
Yeah, where it moves into pathology,
which is another interesting.
Which is something that we like.
No, it's something we do like.
Because in a sense,
what is it about pathology?
Well, I think it's the darker, it's the abnormal, veering from the normal. So it's and there's sort of fault lines in one's psychology or in one's sexual makeup that might make you derude slightly. Or it's a little bit like when you say that the art of the insane, because the structure
it's abnormal. It's
not abnormal in a pejorative way, but in the sense that if they didn't go to art school and say learn proper perspective, fantastic. That's crucial. But of course, if these people are psychologically ill and they represent it by the visual manner, like Adolf Wöffli or
Heinrich Anton
Müller or E.H. In our Emma Hauck in her writing of letters, that these are still highly expressive roots for the person or the
articulation of
their universe and of the universe as they see it, and it's absolutely valid, and in a sense, I think that these are a side that just appeal to us, probably because we were raised so sane, so. We were raised. We were Boy Scouts. We were Eagle Scouts. We went that whole route.
Obedient.
Sweating with obedience in a sense.
Did you grow up in any sort of religious family?
It was Presbyterian, but it wasn't hawkish or wasn't Jehovah's Witness or something more. Thumping.
Right. Well, I noticed that you have no particular aversion, obviously, to listening to religious music or anything like that. It's you. One of the things I've appreciated about your work is you have no particular axe to grind, except whatever it is that's going, whatever this stuff is, Well, did you? I get the feeling though that in this saneness and normality, that being twins, you created something of a secret world of sorts, or a secret perspective, or something like that.
I guess we just must have intuitively felt that there were things lurking just outside that saneness or outside that normal room that were inexplicable, that were dark forces and the shadow realms, which I think appealed to us. The sheer power, evocativeness of when your day shades off into those grays and then into those blacks, was that you were really alert, because the sound realm started to be, it's like night outside on the lawn as kids, when the fireflies started to come out like that,
crickets.
And the crickets the cicadas died down, the terrific hum of cicadas, and then slowly giving way to the hum of the evening crickets there were really magical moments, and I think you were really attuned to the landscape and to, the objects, the nature spoke at those points. And for us, the ritual of when you'd see the 17-year locusts slowly make their way up and abandon the shell, and then became the live cicada. But we used to collect them all the time, these shells.
But I was going to say, I don't think that we, in the making of the films, we create little mysteries just for ourselves. In fact, what we try to evoke is what is in the object, or what is in between objects in the spaces that are provoking us to then provoke ourselves to find or discover this something that is there, or
well, you're trying to articulate something that's quite indefinable, I guess, in a way, and giving it.
It's what music has always done for us, classical music.
And I think it's also that feeling that when you go to establish a mood, that mood can be
sustained,
and it's very, very, very precise. It's not just a wishy-washy mood that you're trying to do, but you're trying to create that very precise spell that is done through the quality of light, to the quality of sound that you lay on it, and the object that you may be animating. So you're trying to bring all these different forces together to release a very, very precise spell. So it's. I think people go, oh yeah, nice mood, but I think it's like a barometric pressure. It's very, it's exactly at a very precise barometric pressure, which is also a psychological pressure, and you feel it in your skin or in your, in the nerve ends. That's something that you're trying to pursue and get it right. And I think ultimately it is a kind of musical realm. It's a sphere that I think, like they always say, all art aspires to music in a way, or that they say music is architecture's frozen music. I think we've always found that crossover point with using decor or.
Well, it sounds like there was certain kinds of textures and in the world you grew up in, maybe textures which no longer exist in a sense because of you've been to modern America recently, and you see what happens when you leave the cities, but even in the cities, New York is no longer the New York of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Sure. That it keeps mutating into these sleek, shiny things, and yet I get the feeling that, you talked about your father worked with furniture, or was that the grandfather?
Well, the backside were cabinet makers, but our father was a first class machinist.
Right.
But he built a house.
But he built the house. He had a workshop behind the garage, which had the lathes, the bandsaws. And he built everything, furniture.
And your mother dealt with fabrics.
Well, she was
she did millinery.
She did millinery, but she was also a figure skater.
Oh, okay.
So that there was that side that.
But it seems like you had from a young age been exposed to these practical elements. But within the practical, I'm kind of imagining that there were old factories or old buildings where things were done, or that there were maybe fabrics and textures and such that were just very.
You were just
gravitate.
Yeah, you were just aware of them, and in your grandparents' home, they had that. You could see from the difference between our parents' house to the grandparents' house, which was already 50 years older. They lived in an old wooden house, so the furniture shifted, the quality, everything shifted. An old, like the clock here. I remember we were haunted as kids by these old grandfather clocks, and and that, for instance, in the septic tank area of the house, the lights would suddenly dim at a certain point, and then.
Would you two, as twins, just kind of look at each other?
Yeah, we go. There
always be kind of in
There it is again.
You know,
it was always between. It was just ricochet,
Right.
batting it back. That
Right.
did you see that at lunch? What happened at that one moment?
Well, I
when
find
grandfather's teeth, the false teeth, sort of separated a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting that I haven't heard one thing in which one person says, "Well, I don't like that as much as you do." You
Yeah.
both seem to gravitate
Yeah.
in this very interesting relationship towards objects, which it's always been kind of like, do you see that kind of
Yeah.
thing? You know, which is, I think, quite amazing, quite wonderful.
I think it's if we were fraternal twins, we would have probably had a lot more different thoughts. But we're literally cleaved.
Right. Have you? You must have seen the book "Curiosities and Anomalies in
Yeah.
Medicine."
We have quite a few books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and it kind of divides the book. The whole book is divided between the minor tirata and the major tirata when it starts dealing with physical issues. And in the minor one, you have growth of hair, strange growth of hair, strange fatness or thinness. But
Yes.
once you get to the major one, it all has to do with cell division. And it finally ends with Chang and Ang.
Yes.
And the amazing thing about them is they're almost completely separate, except for just a
One little tissue.
And I always felt they just needed one more chapter after that, and it was for the people who had been separated. That is, say, the actual identical twins, to understand.
Yes.
That, because, of course, people are always doing studies on twins, scientifically. This guy, he started smoking, those kind of.
Yes, exactly.
But I think it's one of those realms where something's going on that, it's hard to define. It's hard to.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, very human. Very.
Oh yes, no, it is. I mean, I think, of course, everybody wants an ideal twin that they can engage with, and I think that's very natural and human.
I mean, I have no problems pulling you apart now. Part of it is the old adage, you make for yourself your face by the age of 40 or whatever. Right. But when you're younger, you can looking at each other, something I don't know. That is to say, kind of what you look like.
Yes.
Whereas I don't. It's just like, whenever I'm looking at a mirror, I'm kind of like, okay. Whereas now, I mean, like I say, just your habits of thought and reflection create differences that I'd have no problem guessing the Timothy from the Stephen.
Yeah.
But stupid people might, but stupid people always have problems. Yeah, basically, these are most of the questions I wanted to ask. Is there anything else that occurred to you along the way that you wanted to elucidate or get out of your system, or in terms of puppets or your relationship to the films and such?
I was going to say that we probably still haven't, and I know it nags people because it's the idea of what we really learned from Jan. And I think that although I think that our whole ethic or our aesthetic towards puppet was already created, having seen Borowczyk, say, Renaissance, and say Rosalie, and then Starewitch, definitely was formed. I think the thing that when we met Jan was to have met somebody physically living, and that we got to engage and to talk with him, to see the work. And I think for us, when we came back from that 2 or 3 day trip to Prague, when Czech Film Export showed us 15 films, one after the other, in one day, and that was it. And you walked away dazzled or sort of overwhelmed in a sense and confused about what was what, but you came back. And I think that when we decided to do the documentary, that it was a genuine homage to a master, and it's very transparent homage, because obviously we're the child before the Archimboldo-esque character. And I think it was very important that metaphor was an open homage, and that our approach after that, we suddenly realized we had to be fearless, that we had to be not afraid of, intimidated by the animation world, the animation as an art form, that we have to get our hands dirty and really dig in. And I think it was with that little film, The Cabinet of Jan Švankmajer, that we, I don't know, it just sort of breathed life into us, and we tried to announce emblematically his world through this documentary and through these. I mean, in the 55-minute version, which is the one that we created originally, not the short film that was pulled out of it, but the 55-minute version has these four intellectuals talking about surrealism and very impressively about Jan's world. I had no idea if Jan would have just laughed up his sleeve. But the vital fact was he represented the Czech surrealists who were forbidden. I mean, it was unlawful to have met, but they met in secret every Thursday in Prague, and the sheer vitality of those meetings and with Eva, his wife, and whose paintings we adore, that this was a real sign that of this energy that he transmitted to us, and that we were genuine students, and of course, and we all know in history that painters studied with other painters. So they studied with their masters. There's nothing wrong with that, and musicians study with others, with the composers that they've adored and they've learned the craft. But essentially, you have to push out on your own at one point, but I think that in a way it was very beneficial, because in a sense, our little film and the documentary on Švankmajer released him to the West in a way that he hadn't been released, and Keith eventually helped produce Jan's first several feature films, starting with Alice. So it helped Jan enormously, and now when we meet Jan, like in Barcelona at the exhibition the last time, at Metamorphosis exhibition, it's like you're equals. He's very. He doesn't look down on you, or you're one of.
And nor should he. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
No. But I think that one of the things that occurs to me is one of his support networks was the Surrealist group, his wife.
Yes.
All of that. Your support network has been obviously yourself with Keith, and I believe you have another friend who's been helpful over the years.
Ian Nicholas, yes.
Yes. And so that it's the kind of thing that, and I think that people who do things exclusively alone, you just get to a point where you're like, and you need other people to prop you up when you're not, when things aren't exciting.
Exactly.
So.
No, but Jan had a great, and being born in Prague with the legacy that, with the Czech surrealists and the early Czech surrealists at the time of Stiersky and Toyen and with the Wunderkammers and Rudolf II. He's had this great Archimboldo. He's had this great lineage, and Jan, he himself then makes those homages to Archimboldo, to Rudolf II, to Stiersky, to Toyen.
Right. Well, I noticed though one of the things both yourself and Švankmajer has in common is the connection with odd moments in the past, like for instance the Anamorphosis or You know, you found some interesting thing there that, you know, you dug into that in that little documentary.
Yes.
And of course he has the Archimbaldo effect. And that's coming out of his love for mannerism.
Yes.
And I guess that sort of era also has a bit of a connection towards what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's kind of like I often look at the history of art and such as a series of leapfrogging ideas, and one is comes from almost a more rationalist perspective, and the other comes from a more, one would say, maybe romantic perspective.
Yeah.
But of course, these things shade off into all sorts of different things.
Sure. Kilt.
Symbolist.
Yes.
But personal manner without. I mean, you guys have the background, but you don't. Like I said, you don't have the axe to grind. Sometimes he gets a little, his material, it's like you really get the feeling, okay, this is like a little surrealist propaganda here. But, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it.
I wish to stop. I feel exhausted.
Yes. Well, I've dug deep here, I hope.
Oh my God, it's 20 past.
Well, thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of that conversation. I did. I've listened to it now several times completely, and I've gotten plenty out of it. I have edited a few things out of it, but basically what you're getting is what happened. And I would say this. Go find their work. Go start with, there is a Blu-ray of all of their earlier short films. Go watch that. You should also go look for their 3 feature films. Now, I would say it's better to say you should graduate to their 3 feature films. You should go back and watch their short films first. Start with the Epic of Gilgamesh, The Cabinet of Jan Švankmajer, The Street of Crocodiles. Watch some of their short films, which, as I said, can be found on various collections. And then graduate to their 3 feature films, which include The Institute Beniamenta, or The Dream People Call Human Life. That was from 1995. The Piano Tuner of Earthquakes from 2005. And most recently, just released within the last year, late 24, and still being shown in its sneaky previews around the world, Sanatorium Under the Sign of the Hourglass, which is based on a novel by Bruno Schulz, a Polish author. So, do that. And there are books about the Quay brothers, and there are quite a few interviews online. I hope that this interview will satisfy your needs about their relationship to puppetry. And to me, it was one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever had. And I felt a sense of accomplishment, which is one of the reasons I could never go back and say, hey, it was kind of, the film quality wasn't quite what I wanted, but I certainly wasn't going to redo it. It's like lightning in a bottle. There are imperfections. This is life. Enjoy this. And hopefully, if there are any editors out there who would like to help me find the backing to finish the real film, Gravity from Above, I have the original elements. If you are someone who's a producer or has any way of raising, it's not going to take that much, except by film standards, very little. But still, I have all of this material that needs to be assembled finally into a documentary. And what I'm doing here is releasing these longer interviews, which would normally, for 5 minutes in a movie documentary, you got 2 hours here. This is what I did. I wanted to know everyone's opinions about things. I read up on people and wanted them to tell me what it is about puppets. And so, yeah. Oh, by the way, I have a Patreon page. You can join that if you wish. Or if you don't feel like joining up something like that, there's a PayPal link down below, which is actually more efficient, and I get a much better cut from it. Feel free to pass some support my way. I would appreciate that. Well, here in Tbilisi, Georgia, a place you really should look up on a map, we say things like Nakhwamdis, which is goodbye, and Droabit, which means Temporarily. That's all it means. Temporarily. But what it means really is we will indeed see each other again. Thanks for spending time with me today. If you've managed to get this far in the interview and listen to the whole thing, one way you can signal you've done it to me in your comments is use the word lip reading. Remember to put a dash between lip and reading. Okay, drogi.
Popelem vám skalím hlavy! Bude konec vaší slávy!
Na tej bocznej, zapomnianej linii, na której tylko raz na tydzień kursują pociągi, jechało zaledwie paru pasażerów. Nigdy nie widziałem tych wagonów archaicznego typu, dawno wycofanych na innych liniach, obszernych jak pokoje, ciemnych i pełnych zakamarków. Te korytarze, załamujące się pod różnymi kątami, te przedziały puste, labiryntowe i zimne, miały w sobie coś dziwnie opuszczonego, coś niemal przerażającego.